the Children's Advocacy Center of Bristol County's Legislative Breakfast. This is a really fun annual event for us to bring you all up to speed about what's been happening at the center for the last year. Most of you know me. I'm Michele Loranger. I'm the Executive Director of the Children's Advocacy Center. And on behalf of the board, thank you. On behalf of the board and the staff, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here today as we share our accomplishments and hear from our speakers who are our friends and our investors in our mission. I'd like to take some time to acknowledge our legislative delegation. This is an efficient process for us where we get you all in one room, not only our legislative delegation, but our elected officials. I know your time is precious. It's probably one of the most precious things you have, so I really appreciate you all assembling here today so that we can bring you up to speed on the state of the CAC address. Bear with me as I try to, some of you all write like doctors. Apparently that elected official doctor thing is alive and well. So, Toby Paulo from Representative Bob Cazzara's office. Thank you, Toby. Kathy DeRoges from Senator Richard Ross's office is here with us today. Thank you. Our newly appointed District Attorney, Tom Quinn. Thank you so much. Wonderful supporter and friend, Steve Howard, Representative Steve Howard. Senator Timilty. Senator Jim Timilty, thank you. Welcome. He had to leave, but County Commissioner Paul Kitchen was with us earlier. State Representative Tony Cabral. Representative Cabral, thank you. State Representative Paul Schmidt. Thank you. State Representative Keiko Orell. Thanks, Keiko. And State Representative Carol Fiola. Thank you, Carol. State Representative Angelo D'Amelia. Thank you. A special friend and advocate, State Representative Betty Poria. State Representative Jay Barros. And State Senator Michael Rodrigues. Where are you, Michael? Thank you. Constituent Services Director, Brendan, help me out with your name, Brendan. Concannon, thank you, from Senator Mark Pacheco's office. Thank you. And State Rep Alan Sylvia. Thank you. A special friend to the CAC, City Councilor of Fall River, Linda Pereira. State Representative Shauna O'Connell. Thanks, Shauna. And our newest County Commissioner, John Saunders. Where are you, John? Thank you. And also a new one to the field, Governor's Counsel, Joe Ferreira. Thanks, Joe. We have Leslie Duclos from Congressman Joe Kennedy's office. Thank you, Leslie. State Representative Paul Hero. Thanks, Paul. And State Representative Claire Cronin. Thank you, Claire. Have I missed anyone that didn't sign in? If you're an elected official, please let us know that you're with us. Thank you to all of you for being here today. I can't say it enough. I am so appreciative of your time. And so before we move on to breakfast, and we have two lines here, so folks should divide and conquer so that we can get you your food as fast as possible. We're lucky enough to have with us again Reverend Robin Lawrence, a CAC friend and supporter, to offer the invocation.
Wow, going over that list that you just gave, you know, the only thing that came to my mind listening is that we know how to deflate a football, but boy, do we know how to inflate the character of people that are dependent on us, with the people that are in this room here this morning. So congratulations. I'm reminded of John Stuart Mills in one of his writings. He said that if you have a vision in life, but no task, all you have is a dream. If you have a task to do, but no vision with that task, all you have is drudgery, just a job to do. But he says in his writings that if you have a vision and you work at it, and you see the task involved that can enrich the lives that we have, he said, therein lies the goodness of life. Therein lies the good things that can result. And that's what we're doing here today. People who not only have the vision of what the world can be for our children, but not more than that, every one of you committed to make it work, to make it indeed viable. It certainly is based on a Judeo-Christian teaching that when we're taught to permit little children to come unto me and forbid them not, for such, he says, is the kingdom of heaven. Well, God has a way of controlling the fact that permitting the little children to come unto me, but forbid them not is your job. That's our job. That's the second part of the equation. And my friends, we're grateful that we're in the company of those who assume that responsibility. And so, oh God, this morning, as we gather here in the joy of this company, in the presence of those who have the authority to take legislative steps that can make a difference in the lives of children, to acknowledge that as a society we're truly our children's keepers, and to use our voice in defense of those who at a tender age have no voice. So put into our hearts today, O God, the power to heal broken lives, to heal broken homes, the broken spirit that makes one feel victimized. Give us the tools and the motivation to repair the breach, a breach that can once again make one feel whole, worthy, valued. These ideals, my friends, are more than legislative ambitions. They're the ideals of an America. They're the ideals of the community in which we live, for which we have hope. These are the ideals that fulfill your promise that you have not dealt so with any other nation. And until society learns to permit children to be what and who they are, with all the promises of a happy life, until as a concerned people, we allow children to dream of life's joys and accomplishments, and until as responsible leaders, we are advocates for a child's growth and development, then as a community, we're noting but the fact that we're just passengers on the sea of life, those turbulent seas that so many people experience. But direct our course, O God. Direct those that are here this morning, and indeed in those uncharted waters, the things that haven't been explored, the things that lie in the promises and the possibilities of what yet things can become for the lives of little children. And may the old harbors of abuse, indifference, and complacency about the welfare of children and respond to the desperate cries of those who seek our support. So together, each of us, we may experience the new harbors of grace, protection, and safety. And by your direction, O Lord, make the welfare of all the supreme law of the land. And in these troubled times, teach us how our love and concern can bind the wounds of those who are victimized by fear. And so, O God, we're grateful for this opportunity, that our sense of reconciliation can replace any aggression that we have, that our caring and support can replace apathy, and may our love be felt for what seems so frequently unlovable. As we are privileged to live in a nation where the voice of the people is still the determining factor in how we're governed, May our dependence upon you be the determining factor in how we live, move, and have our being. This prayer is offered in your name, O God, and for all of those here that assume that responsibility to indeed fulfill what we perceive to be the fulfillment of your holy will. In his name, peace, shalom, and amen.
Okay, folks, bon appetit. There are 2 lines here, and we'll be back here shortly. A few other elected officials joined us while we were eating. Hugh Dunn from Congressman Keating's office is with us today. Hugh. Congressman Keating is very familiar with the Children's Advocacy Center model and was instrumental in the Norfolk County CAC. And Senator Mark Montigny has joined us. Senator Montigny, thank you. I hope everyone has enjoyed their breakfast. No better way than to get a group of people together and listen than feed them. So thank you to Bob Karam and BK's Tavern for taking really good care of us. A few more introductions. The foundation by which the Children's Advocacy Center exists, I'd like to take a moment and just call attention to to my board of directors. Leslie Knowles, chairman of the board. Leslie. Michele Roberts, vice chair. Greg O'Donnell, treasurer. Greg, where are you? And Dennis Souza is our clerk of the executive committee. And we're thrilled to have District Attorney Tom Quinn joining at the standing seat for the DA at our board. Thank you. Kevin Aguiar, I don't know if Kevin was able to make it today. Attorney Elizabeth Duffy. Thank you. Dean Mary Lou Bielek. I think she's had to stay back. Joan McFall from South Coast Hospitals Group. Joan. Dr. Pamela Spatz, the Chief of Urgent Care Centers for South Coast, is also on our board. Jana LaFrance, Pamela McLeod Lima, both of whom couldn't be with us today. Sylvia Rudman, Chief of the Abuse Prosecution Unit. And the Honorable Lloyd McDonald has recently joined our board, but he is not with us today. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce the staff and volunteers of the Children's Advocacy Center. They work hard each day for all of you here in this room, but most especially for the children and families of our county. Vanjie Auclair. Vanjie, most of you know Vanjie. She works tirelessly as our development director, and I'm thrilled to have her a member of our team. Jessica Costigan. Today she is a forensic interviewer, and as of February 2nd, she will be the associate director of the Children's Advocacy Center. Kayla Carrata from the District Attorney's Office, team member at the CAC, forensic interviewer. Tiffany Days is our administrative support over helping everyone get checked in. Krista Machado is our mental health coordinator. She joined the team in August. Nasha Macedo joined us in November as the education and outreach coordinator. Mildreen Toulis is our pediatric sexual assault nurse examiner. And Denny Zember, our program coordinator, who is working tirelessly on grants and our case review process. Denny gave me his 5-year notice and will be, after his 7-year tenure, will be leaving the organization at the end of June. Denny? Thank you. Karen Souza is our wonderful receptionist in family waiting room. She has joined us recently. Yasmin, apologize for your last name. Coulibaly? Coulibaly, thank you. Yasmin has been a steadfast volunteer from UMass, Chris Barboza, one of the first volunteers for the CAC 7 years ago. Another steadfast volunteer, Debbie Sari. Tiffany Campos is with us today. And our own Brianna Gomez Vienna. She can never leave us. Now she's back with us in a volunteer capacity. So thank you to all of you for making the CAC what it is today, a compassionate process for children and families. I'd like to reiterate my profound thank you to the legislative delegation. Thank you for being here today, for your support, and for fighting for our funding. Who would have imagined that we would not be funded in fiscal year 2015, but amendments and making the CAC your priority has me standing here once again to share the good work of the agency, and thank you to all of you for that. And to the county commissioners, your consistent funding for the past 5 years offers significant assistance with our occupancy costs. We could not do this without you, and for that I thank you as well. The concept of a Children's Advocacy Center is built on a national model of bringing together collective expertise in one place. The model is intended to render best outcomes for children and their families, from investigation to healing and justice. The inception of this model dates back to the early 1980s by a visionary, then District Attorney Bud Kramer. After successfully starting the first Children's Advocacy Center in Huntsville, Alabama, Bud Kramer went on to be a U.S. Congressman and established the National Membership Organization for Children's Advocacy Centers, which is also the accrediting body. The CAC of Bristol County, while only 7.5 years young, will be applying for national accreditation this spring. Many in this room today, and many of your predecessors from all jurisdictions and the DCF offices have participated in a meeting structure formed by the CAC called the Professional Advisory Committee, or PAC as we called it. Each of our 20 law enforcement jurisdictions, the 3 child welfare or DCF offices, our DCF regional office, St. Anne's Youth Trauma Program, who is the steadfast mental health representative at the table, the Massachusetts PD SANE program, and the District Attorney's Office have all had a voice and a role in the creation of the county's Children's Advocacy Center. For the first 5 years of this agency's existence, many of us met monthly to discuss and agree on how to proceed and for the best outcomes for the children and families we all served. These agreements and protocols belong to this county, to all of you who have agreed on nothing short of best practices towards the goal of healing and justice for our families. While it's an accreditation agreement and an accreditation requirement to have signed agreements amongst all the partners, what we should be most proud of is the teamwork and partnership that has resulted in numerous cases of success within our county. Now, success spans a very broad definition and is based on individual needs and desired outcomes of the child and family, and the teamwork that has been unique to each of the case that presents to the center. So with that said, I would ask each chief of police or designee, our leaders here today from the Department of Children and Families, if Craig Jaslowski is here from St. Anne's Youth Trauma Program and St. Anne's, District Attorney Tom Quinn, and Second Assistant and Chief of the Special Victims Unit, Sylvia Rudman, to please stand. Affirmation and continued commitment to the agreed upon protocols itemized in the Memorandum of Understanding presented to all of you prior to today and signed on to earlier this morning. Your commitment to evidence-based practices and teamwork is so important to our continued work together. On behalf of the child victims and their families, I want to thank you all for your cooperation, your partnership, and your commitment to our mission. Thank you so much. So our first speaker is a member of our committee structure to our board of directors. However, she speaks to you today as a citizen of Bristol County who has come to learn about the CAC through her involvement with Bristol County Savings Bank and South Coast Hospitals, and has come to embrace our mission. She understands the need for best practices, and equally as important, understands the need for addressing the staggering statistics of child abuse and the important work of the Children's Advocacy Center. Please help me welcome Chancellor Emeritus Jean MacCormack.
Well, I was honored to be invited by Michele to speak to you today on behalf of the Children's Advocacy Center. I look out and I see so many people that I respect, and I know you are all here because you believe in the mission of the Children's Advocacy Center. And you are part of the agencies and the collaborations that make this difficult but necessary work effective. You serve the most vulnerable children and their families to ensure that both justice is served and that healing begins. We all wish that this work was not necessary, but it must be done. And if it must be done, we know that Bristol County is indeed fortunate to have such a dedicated and caring, committed, creative staff, because when you're in a 501(c), you must be creative, doing this important work. It's hard work, heartbreaking at times. It needs to be done with the most professional and personal touch possible. We are blessed by having the individuals that Michele introduced and the partners that we have to do this work for us, because indeed they do it for us, because this is our community affected by this abuse and neglect and injury of children. Each time I visit the center, I leave feeling grateful that there are people willing and able to do this work for our community. The statistics about the cases in Bristol County are staggering, but I decided not to give you statistics for breakfast this morning. The needs for intervention, court actions, and recovery services in our county are great, as well as the need for greater education and support for those who work with children, teachers, nurses, camp counselors, all of those people who intersect with children and families, to allow them to recognize, to respond to, and to report suspected cases of abuse or neglect. CAC is a tremendous resource, but as I said, like most 501(c)s, they need help. Many of you have been personal donors, and I expect you will continue to be personal donors. Private funding support is essential for this work. And I think the CAC is a great example of a public-private partnership. I urge all of you in the private sector to continue to support their work and for our individual donors to invest as well. But public support, there's no free breakfast here, guys. Public support for the CAC is the core of its sustainability. This is a legislative breakfast, and our colleagues who serve in elected office attend a lot of these at this time of year. I've been to many, I've hosted many in my role as Chancellor at UMass. They know that they are going to be asked I'm here to do this asking. Everyone is asking them for their help and support for institutions and causes that are important to them. Everyone makes a compelling case for need. There are competing goods that need to be accomplished. I've done it myself for UMass Dartmouth, and I know that our good delegation listens, learns, and makes every effort to help. And I want to say, my friends, we do have a wonderful group of public servants. Having worked in several parts of the state, I know that they are among the very best. They are the most committed to their region and its well-being, and they work very effectively as a team to accomplish goals that some others might not even attempt. They understand how the budget process works and can be doggedly determined to make good things happen. They also understand the political process of how good things compete with good things. There wouldn't be any UMass Law School without them. There would not have been the extraordinary growth for Bridgewater State University, for BCC, for UMD. There would have been no creative economic development projects. There would not be the possibility of South Coast Rail and many other achievements in our regions. So even though we're going to ask them for more, we owe them a debt of gratitude for serving so well. I count many of them as good friends. They serve well, and more importantly, they lead well. So their work is not done. I'm leading up to this. You know, I have to ask for this. The Children's Advocacy Center needs more public funding. They cannot serve all those that they must serve with $250,000 of public funds and raised private dollars. They are, as Michele said, extremely grateful for the help that you have given them. But they can't educate all of those people who need to understand these issues so as to prevent and provide healing for injured children. And above all, we cannot ask them, and I can't envision that they would ever be able to turn away a child or a family or a case that needs to be addressed. But they're funded in a unique way compared to other Commonwealth CACs. So helping them does present some unique challenges. But nonetheless, they do deserve your special attention this year, even if it is a challenging budget year. Are there ever not challenging budget years? The people in our Commonwealth want to provide great services, but we're not quite sure we want to pay taxes to get those services. But I am asking you to make the CAC one of your highest budget priorities and to make them the beneficiary of your best political persuasion powers. I'm asking you to reward them for having been creative and entrepreneurial in sustaining programming when the budget was cut in the last 9C cuts, and to try to protect them from the impending 9C cuts. In protecting them and in arguing for them, you are not advocating for the CAC, you're advocating for the most vulnerable children and families in our community. I, of all people, understand that the list that you're going to have is going to be long. But even if I was still the Chancellor at UMass Dartmouth with a long list of my own needs, I would urge you to move this request to the top. These children will never succeed in Meg's school or in the schools in the whole region. They'll never have the chance to go to college, to be successful, and heal and give back to our communities without this life-changing early intervention. If you could provide another $250,000, because you always told me to be concrete about what I need, you would not only help the center to meet its mission more fully, you would signal that you support this kind of public-private partnership for servicing the needs of Bristol County. And you would announce that Bristol County, as it often does in many things, leads the way in modeling how government and the private sector can address critical social issues. I'm a person, as I said to Mike Shea, who has flunked retirement gloriously. I have the good fortune presently to serve as the interim president of the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the Senate. A little commercial here, you probably don't know as much about it. Senator Kennedy had the vision to say, you know, I'm worried about young people not believing in the process of government, that they don't understand that democracy is messy and it takes commitment and hard work to make it work. I don't want a monument to me. I want a place where people can learn about how government really works. I used to laugh and say to my colleagues in the legislature when I would be at the State House to see them and advocate, that when you heard the group of fourth graders hearing how a bill becomes a law, I'd be going up to the stairs and saying, it's not quite like that. It's a little more complicated than that. So the Institute will open on March 30th to a lot of fanfare with the president, the vice president, former senators, and a lot of people from the local elected community and friends and family to celebrate the full replica of the United States Senate to scale, the opportunity to come there. It's a completely high-tech, high-touch exhibit. You get your Google pad when you come in. There are no things like in museums. There's exhibits that are electronically controlled and that you interact with. And you get a chance to go into the Senate and participate in the process of seeing how a bill really becomes a law. Students can come for 2 hours for a whole simulation session on being a senator in training. But it's given me a chance to also think about Senator Kennedy. He didn't want a monument to himself. He said, I was not a perfect man, but he was an extraordinarily effective legislator. He stood for his principles. He created remarkable legislation that affects all of us. The Civil Rights Act, the Voters' Rights Act, ADA, all kinds of the Affordable Care Act if you have a pre-existing condition. But he did it one step at a time. He often said that the perfect is the enemy of the good. You can't get anything and everything. You can't pass a law if you want it to be perfect. Just move the needle. Just make one good thing happen. He committed to accomplish common good, and he hoped to accomplish change by finding common ground. So I'm asking you to unleash your own considerably powerful legislative skills to help the most vulnerable children of Bristol County. You'll do it by working across the aisle and with leadership to find the common good. You'll do it by balancing all the needs of the things that people ask you for. I know I stand ready to assist you, and I'm confident that the people in this room will do that as well. If you will lead, we will follow. Thank you.
Just imagine the supporter. She's hosting the president and the vice president next month, and she's here speaking on our behalf. Jean, thank you so, so much. National research and our own local statistics tell us that one of our primary prevention messages for parents is to be informed on the facts of child sexual abuse and to be hypervigilant regarding caretaker choices. The CAC of Bristol County has developed its own prevention brochure aimed at providing those messages and other information to make parents aware of ways to protect their children. Disseminating brochures with key prevention messages are a very small part of the agency's education and outreach program. This fiscal year, we have been able to hire a dedicated person to carry out the duties of that program, thanks to the support of our legislative delegation and the generosity of Bristol County Savings Bank. Our mental health capacity building program, which has been in existence for the past 4 years, as well as the continued development of our education and outreach program, would not be possible without the support from our private donors and funders. There are many here today who have supported and have donated to the agency, which has allowed the CAC to offer these trainings to build increased capacity and competency for all children throughout our county. I would be remiss if I did not restate the significant contributions from the private sector, St. Anne's Hospital, who has stood with us for the last 7 years, but most especially in 2010 and 2011, when joined by South Coast hospitals in the height of the economic downturn, to which our community hospitals were instrumental in the agency's ability to continue its services to abused children. As Jean said, public-private partnership. That's what we're all about. So I'd like to ask Michele Roberts, Executive Vice President and Community Relations Officer from Bristol County Savings Bank and our board chair, to come speak with you.
It's not easy following Jean MacCormack, but I'll do my best. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about my personal involvement with the Children's Advocacy Center and applaud the great work that they do. I'm actually here in 2 capacities this morning. The first is as a private funder. As Michele mentioned, I work for Bristol County Savings Bank, and part of my role is to run our charitable foundation. And we have been financially supporting the Children's Advocacy Center for the past several years. I first became aware of the important and much-needed work of the CAC during a tour I took, ironically, with Jean MacCormack, as among all of her other retired duties, she chairs our South Coast Advisory Board for our foundation. The tour was eye-opening, to say the least, and had a real impact on me personally. Once I understood what the center was providing for children and families in our region, and how dedicated Michele, Vanjie, and the entire staff are, I knew right away that this was an organization that we absolutely had to support. Since then, our foundation has provided over $25,000 in funding assistance for various programs that Michele mentioned, including the Mental Health Capacity Building Program, some ARC training, and the annual Race Against Child Abuse Derby Gala. But last year, as Michele mentioned, the Outreach and Education Program got off the ground. If I can just take a minute to address the importance of this program. As we all know, education and prevention is the cornerstone of what the Children's Advocacy Center is all about. It's about our mission. And the addition of Nasha as an education coordinator was a really important step in preventing child abuse cases in Bristol County and providing needed education for schools and agencies that work with these children on a regular basis. Okay, I'm going to put on my other hat. I'm also the current vice chair of the board of the CAC. And as I mentioned earlier, after that first tour, I was hooked. Michele has heard me say many times since then that they had me at hello. And they really did have me at hello. So Michele wanted a representative from the bank to join the board. And both the CEO and president of the bank, Pat Murray, many of you know him, and I both wanted the position. Many of you probably also know that Pat Murray is my husband, and the fact that I'm standing here tells you that I won. So that doesn't happen all the time, I'll tell you that. But we get involved in organizations for a variety of reasons. We're all involved in multiple organizations. I happen to sit on 6 boards currently. But I can tell you that I feel passionate about the work that the CAC is doing in our community and the way that they compassionately deliver these services. The CAC is a direct service agency, yet is doing so much more to affect positive outcomes for the lives of children throughout Bristol County. As a private funder, I see the need for us to continue to financially support the CAC. And as Jean said, I encourage other individuals and organizations to invest in their work, or simply just take a tour. Trust me, they'll have you at hello. I feel confident in saying that your dollars will have a direct impact in the community. As a board member, I can assure you that we have a well-thought-out strategic plan to help us stabilize our funding needs while meeting the ever-increasing needs for our services. However, we can't do it alone. Funding stabilization means ongoing support from both the private and public sectors. And just as everybody else this morning, I would like to sincerely thank the legislative delegation, many of whom I know personally in this room this morning, and all the elected officials for your critical assistance in procuring our increased state funding last year. Your efforts are truly appreciated. Thank you. I can also assure you that we operate as lean and efficient as possible, but there is so much more to do. I will end with a quote from Nelson Mandela. "Safety and security don't just happen. They are the result of collaborative consensus and public investment. We owe our children, the most vulnerable citizens in our society, a life free of violence and fear." Thank you so much for your time.
How lucky are we at the Children's Advocacy Center? So a quick review of what else we've been up to in the last year. In fiscal year 2014, we served 565 families for our direct services at the center. We have hosted 4 interns from varying agencies of study from 4 different colleges and universities. The CAC has been planning and will offer its 4th training in the upcoming months as part of our mental health capacity building program, because we know that early connection to specialized mental health services is a key factor for healing and resilience. The agency, as you know, has also hired the Education and Outreach Coordinator, which will address the significant unmet need for increased presence throughout the county to offer the much-needed prevention initiatives. 2014 was a rather surreal year at the Children's Advocacy Center with staffing challenges due to significant maternity leaves. But as Michele mentioned, creativity was at its peak by then, again, another example of partnership with the Fall River Police Department, the Taunton Police Department, and the New Bedford Police Department that all partnered with me to send 3 different detectives to be trained as specially trained child forensic interviewers because our volume was such that the staff we had on hand couldn't handle it. It's just another example of creative partnership. We have provided trainings to more than 330 county professionals, ranging from educators, city solicitors, parks and recreation departments, emergency department personnel, and many, many more spanning Taunton, New Bedford, North Attleboro, and Rehoboth. We have reached more than 1,000 children and families with our presence at outreach events, and with the development of an education and outreach program, we will now have the opportunity to say, yes, we will be there, instead of, I'm sorry, we don't have the resources to be at your event. You can't pick up a newspaper or read anything now. There isn't an article about sexting and cyberbullying. There is a profound need for continued education to both parents and children regarding the safe and appropriate use of cell phones and technology. So through a grant awards from the Fall River United Way and Mansfield Bank, the Children's Advocacy Center will offer 12 different assemblies to students in Fall River, Westport, Somerset, and North Attleboro on the safe and responsible use of technology. Additionally, the CAC will be hosting 2 parent education night assemblies by the nationally renowned speaker from the Institute for Responsible Online and Cell Phone Communication. Last spring, the CAC and the topic of child sexual abuse was the subject of a month-long series in the Fall River Herald. The amazing team of journalists and photographers spent so much time learning the issues, interviewing staff, and sharing the story of a survivor served at the Children's Advocacy Center. In the fall, the Herald News won the New England Newspaper and Press Association Award for the series. I would like to publicly thank Lisa Stratton, Lynn Sullivan, Deb Allard, Brian Fraga, and Jack Foley for being such good friends and concerned citizens to work with us for a whole month about a topic that is not always well received for the general public. It was clear to me that this wasn't about what sells papers. It was always about wanting to assist with awareness and be part of the solution. Thank you. The CAC was also the recipient of the Fall River Child Protection Council Service Award this winter in recognition of our compassionate services to child victims and our efforts towards education and prevention. We have much to be proud of, and we have accomplished a great deal, but as you're hearing today, significant unmet needs remain. So what's the real barometer for determining need for the Children's Advocacy Center? The need for more volunteers, the need for interns, the need for public funding and state funding, the need for more private funding and support. Is it the cost of child abuse to society? We know the economic impact of child maltreatment is clearly defined in numerous pieces of research. We know there is significant economic burden from child maltreatment, direct costs, as well as lost productivity that results for victims impacted by abuse. Research tells us it costs a lot of money to treat the consequences of abuse, and further, an adult's economic well-being is significantly hampered when impacted by abuse and neglect. The social and emotional impact of childhood trauma is clearly defined in the ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences study, which demonstrates a clear correlation of adverse childhood experiences with significant physiological impact over the lifespan. While this is important information, we have known this for a long time, and it hasn't had any effect in the determination for the need for the Children's Advocacy Center. Our need is clearly demonstrated right here in our backyard. My barometer, and what compels me each and every day to advocate tirelessly for funding and support, is the feedback we get from the Bristol County families we serve each and every day. Often it's the, "Thank you, this place is great," or a parent who says, "I wish this place was around when this happened to me." It's the experience of the Carter family and the more than 3,100 families served at the CAC to date. Myra?
I say bubble because really that's how I've always perceived my life. I've been married for 22 years to my high school sweetheart. I own my own business. I have 2 beautiful daughters. I volunteer at school, go to PTA meetings, sit through piano lessons and track practices. A true white picket fence life, right down to the dog. That all being said, my story could be anybody's story. Approximately 2 years ago, as I tucked my 9-year-old daughter into bed, I was going over the details of the next day. She had just turned 9, and it was tradition for my father to take her out for a special birthday lunch. I told her he was going to pick her up after work, and they would go back to his house so he'd get cleaned up, and then they would go to Friendly's restaurant. She listened, and then she said, "That sounds okay, but I don't want to do the inappropriate snuggling." My heart sank, but I remained upbeat and asked her what she meant, and if she could show me with her stuffed animals, and she did. I told her that he shouldn't be asking her to do those things, that her body was her body, and nobody should touch her private areas, something my husband and I have said many times to both of our daughters. She said, "I know, but he makes me feel bad and won't stop asking until I do it." We talked for a bit more, and I told her I would speak to Grandpa. She looked up at me and said, "That's okay, Mom. I will just tell him no again." I kissed her goodnight and went downstairs. The moment I left her room, I knew our lives would never be the same. I really didn't know what to say to my husband. I was in a state of shock. I told him what she said about the inappropriate snuggling and nothing more. I was already going into protection mode. I didn't want to tell him too much for fear that he would do something irrational, making the situation even worse. Needless to say, I could not sleep that night. I went to bed knowing that I would never let either of my daughters near my father again. But how was I going to do that? How do you cut ties with someone who is a huge part of your life, as my father was? The next day came very quickly, and I still had no plan. I spent the day driving around with the girls, hiding. Luckily, my mom, who is divorced from my father, had come by in the evening, right when my husband got home. I asked her if she could sit with the girls for a bit while we ran a quick errand. We decided that we would go to his house, get our house key back, and I needed to let him know that he was no longer welcome in our lives. We arrived at his apartment and he greeted us with a big smile. I was not smiling. I couldn't even look at him in the face. But I told him some things were said by one of the girls, and I wanted my key back, and I never wanted to see him again. He said okay, and gave me my key. We left. I cried. You may be wondering how the CAC fits into all of this. It sounds like we handled the situation, and we did handle the situation. It was done. The girls were safe. That night, as I was tucking my youngest in, she began talking in almost a baby tone and would not settle, claiming she was scared and she needed me. She didn't want to be alone. It took me almost 45 minutes of just sitting with her until she fell asleep. That continued the next night, and the next, and the next. I expressed my concerns to my husband, and we decided to talk to the school nurse because it was obvious everything was not okay. We went in the next day and had a meeting with our school nurse, someone that we both had known for about 5 years and that knew both of our girls very well. I told her what had happened. She was a bit surprised because usually it's not the parents coming forward looking for help. She was just finishing her training on becoming a mandated reporter and was going to talk to her instructor about what we should do. Later that day, I got a phone call from her. She was going to have to file a report. She had no choice. I told her that I understood and asked her if she could just wait until Monday so we could talk to our oldest daughter, who was 11 at the time. We had already told her that we were taking a break from Grandpa, but I wanted to talk to her one last time just to make sure she did not have anything to add. Monday came, she filed her report, and I waited. I waited for that dreaded phone call from DCF. It came and my defenses went up, my head was spinning, several phone calls and endless questions, only resulting in me having to let a stranger meet the girls, check our home, invade my bubble. I had every scenario in my head of what the visit from DCF was going to be like. I watch TV, I know how it works. They come in, tell you you're a bad parent, and take the kids away. Obviously, that was not how it worked. Mr. Thompson was very warm and caring, only said hi to the girls and asked them where they went to school and how old they were. That was it for them. They went off to play. I had to again explain what had transpired with my youngest daughter, assuring him that the oldest daughter had nothing to add. He informed me that our youngest daughter would need to be questioned further to determine if a crime had been committed. We had a choice. He continued. I can question her now, and if I feel there's enough evidence to pursue, she will need to go to the police station and be questioned by a detective. Or we can set up an appointment with the Children's Advocacy Center where she can talk to a forensic interviewer trained to talk to children one-on-one in a calm, friendly atmosphere. They will have all the necessary departments in a separate room, watching and listening, making the determination if a crime had been committed. I did not want to do either, but that was not an option, so we made a choice, the CAC. I informed Mr. Thompson the next day of our decision, and an appointment was made for our youngest daughter. Within 2 days, we were at the CAC. But while waiting for the appointment, my oldest daughter pulled me aside and asked, "Why does she need to go talk to someone about what happened? Can't she just talk to you?" I told her that sometimes it's easier to tell the whole truth to someone besides Mom, so you don't get that weird mom look. Make sense? She looked at me and said, yes, it does. I called Mr. Thompson the next day and asked him if they can talk to my oldest daughter also. Something in the way she had spoken made me concerned there was more. We arrived at the CAC, got greeted by the friendliest lady ever, Dolly. We were led into a room filled with toys and books and brightly colored walls. A few short moments later, in pops Jessica. She makes some small talk with the girls and takes my youngest back to talk. Probably 20 to 30 minutes later, they return, and she takes my oldest back to talk. Again, another 20-30 minutes passes. My oldest returns smiling, but red-faced, like she had been crying. During the time my girls were with Jessica, I spoke with Corey, who explained that she could help with getting counseling or any services after we all had a chance to discuss the interview and next steps. It was now my turn to talk to Jessica. Dolly swooped in with snacks and juice boxes and sat with the girls while I went back into a different room, the conference room. I can't even remember who was in the room, but it was a team of people, a team looking out for the best interests of my daughters and my husband and I. It was in that room that I found out that not one, but both of my daughters had been molested. We left the CAC just as easily as we came, with a friendly wave from Dolly and I'll be in touch from Jessica. The very next day, Jessica or Corey followed up with me with a list of services available and a contact for a therapist she knew that felt would be a good fit for the girls. I talked several times to Jessica and Corey. Both kept checking up on me, making sure we were okay. Within days of the girls telling what had happened to them at the CAC, my father was arrested and released on bail. We began counseling. In the months that followed, more and more disclosures came from the girls, resulting in the case moving up to Superior Court. After 2 years, the trial finally came and both girls testified. Thanks to Casey Smith and her team, he was found guilty and sentenced to 18 years in prison. The girls remain connected to the counseling we were referred to 2 years ago. The therapist has been a very important part of our healing and the girls' ability to get through the court process. If it was not for the CAC, we would have never known what our daughters had gone through. We would have not been connected to the right services. In hindsight, it baffles me why we were ever given a choice to go to the CAC. It should be standard procedure. Children are not adults. They can't be treated as such, especially in sensitive situations like ours. Through the whole process, we all felt like we had a team working for us, and we did, all because of the work that the CAC did. It was not easy for me to speak today. I know most of you in here know the statistics that 1 in 4 girls are sexually abused. With numbers like that, it's obvious that the CAC is needed to give families the strength and the resources to fight back so that they too can rebuild their white picket fence. Thank you.
Myra, thank you. I would like to also ask the team that supported this amazing family through their journey to stand and be recognized. From Attleboro Police Department Detective, now Sergeant Alex Aponte. I don't know if he's with us. Alex, are you here? Jessica Costigan. Alex, thank you. Jessica Costigan was the forensic interviewer. Our former mental health coordinator, Corey Costa. Victim advocate, Deb Almeida. Constant support to the family. And ADA, Casey Smith. So how's that for teamwork? Thank you once again. So in conclusion, public-private partnership. It's what we're all about. The CAC is providing public safety and public health services for all of Bristol County. Teamwork and best practices is now a formalized and agreed upon practice for each and every case. Detective, social worker, donor, interviewer, funder, prosecutor, volunteer, director, advocate, journalist, business owner, survivor, and many, many more. I thank you all for your time and commitment and support to our mission at the Children's Advocacy Center, but please know that our work is not done. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes, a quote that truly emulates my sentiments to all of you in this room today and to all that support the Children's Advocacy Center and to all that help abused children in your variety of ways. And it's a quote from Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say, it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. And then there are those who see the need and respond. And I consider those people my heroes. Thank you to all of you for being the heroes of the Children's Advocacy Center of Bristol County. Thank you.